Hello, seventh grade. All right, so we are going to be making baked ziti. I'm actually going to be making this over 2 days here at school, so you're actually going to see my outfit change in this video. But we're going to start today and go ahead and prep the meat and the pasta. So the recipe you have, first thing you do is heat a large pot for water. So I have this on high right now because I'm trying to bring it up to a boil. I'm going to be cooking 1 pound of pasta. I'm actually using penne instead of ziti. The difference would be that penne has ridges in it and ziti is a smooth tubular pasta. The penne is also cut on an angle on the ends, whereas ziti is straight. Okay, so I need 1 pound of pasta, and I'm also going to be browning up my Italian sausage and my onion today. So the water is fairly close to boiling. I know this because the whole bottom of the pan is currently covered in bubbles. They just haven't started to release yet. Okay, when we boil pasta, we want it to be salty. Pasta has no flavor, so it's really important that when we boil pasta, we impart that flavor into it. So we always say with pasta, it should be salty like the ocean. Okay, so I'm gonna take some kosher salt, okay, and I'm gonna put about 3 big pinches in here, okay? And this really helps impart flavor into my pasta, okay? A lot of times people say, oh, let's add salt to the water so the water boils faster. That is an urban myth. The water boils no faster with salt. What the salt does though, however, is lower the boiling point, okay? Which means the water will boil at a lower temperature, it raises the boiling point. Water boils at a higher temperature, and then your food cooks more quickly because the water is hotter, okay? So I just did it. The bubbles are starting to release. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my pasta. This recipe calls for 1 pound of pasta. Typically these boxes of pasta are sold in 1 pound, which you can look right on the box and it will tell you whether or not it is 1 pound of pasta. Personally, I'm using this Protein Plus pasta. This pasta has legumes in it, so it's also made with beans in addition to wheat, and so it is higher in protein, lower in carbohydrates. This is a great choice if people in your family are diabetic or need to watch their carbohydrate intake and are trying to incorporate more protein into their diet. So this is a great option. Okay, almost there. I do not want to add the pasta before the water starts boiling. I do want to go ahead and get this pan warmed up so that I can start cooking my meat. Okay, so never waste time in the kitchen. I'm gonna go ahead and dice my onion while I'm waiting. Okay, so I have this nice big onion. I'm gonna take the stem, tear the stem off. Here's my root. First thing I'm gonna do is actually cut straight down through my onion, stem to root. I'm gonna leave the roots on. Those roots hold the layer of my onion together. Okay, clear off my cutting board. All right, peel back these onion layers. Okay, so all I have are nice fleshy parts of my onion. All right. All right. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut this little brown part of the stem off of each onion. Okay. Baked ziti is a great way if you really love lasagna but don't want to deal with all the effort that goes into lasagna to get that flavor without all the work. Okay, so remember when we dice an onion, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to cut back through the onion towards the root. Okay, I am not cutting all the way through the onion. See that? Okay, and since this onion is a little fatter, I'm gonna actually do that process twice, okay? Now I'm gonna cut vertical slits back towards the root end of my onion, okay? And then I'm gonna come over here and just go down the front, and now my onion falls into these little beautiful dices. They're nice and small. The nice thing about a dice is that it is so small that when it cooks, it almost just kind of disappears into nothing, okay? So here we are dicing my onion. All right. Okay. All right. Nice onion dices. That's all that goes in the trash. Okay, nothing is wasted. All right, make sure you're keeping your workspace clear. So I'm gonna push this to the edge of my cutting board so I still have plenty of room to cut with. Oh, and my water just started boiling. Perfect timing, okay? So, all right. Now my water is boiling, I'm gonna add my pasta. Okay, this needs to boil until it is al dente. Al dente means to the tooth in Italian. That is 8 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer over here for 8 minutes. Let's see, kitchen timer, 8. Start. Beautiful. All right, cut back on my vertical slices in my onion. Okay. And then go ahead and dice down this side as well. Okay, when you get to kind of this flat part, a lot of times you have to cut back again towards the root because you couldn't get that far the first time. So I just make sure everything is cut and then cut down my onion, and all my dicing is done. All right, so now my onion is here. It is waiting, it is ready to go. I'm gonna set my knife by my sink, but not in my sink, because again, I don't wanna hurt myself by putting my knife in soapy water. So that's boiling. I'm gonna go ahead and open my sausage. This pan is nice and hot now. You can also use ground beef for this recipe. One thing I like to do whenever I'm cooking a ground meat like this, especially if it comes kind of flat, okay? One thing I like to do is to actually not break it up right away, okay? So I don't even need to put any fat in my pan because this has fat in it, right? It's pork, you can hear it. All right, I'm gonna peel off the little wax paper that was in there, and I'm actually just gonna let that sit in the pan and start to cook on that side, okay? All right, when we come back, I will add the onions, brown everything together, and then drain the pasta. All right, so my timer just went off for my pasta. Okay, I wanna make sure it is al dente, so I'm just gonna take a fork, okay? And I'm gonna try to catch just one little noodle, let that sit for a minute. My meat has been browning, okay, on one side, so I'm gonna actually just pick the whole piece up and turn it over. Okay, you can see it's nice and brown. Okay, that's where the flavor, I caught a switch with a piece. That's where the flavor comes in. So that meat is nice and brown. Okay, I'll let that other side brown, and then I'm gonna continue with adding my onions so that they can start to brown as well. Okay. Right. I'm gonna add my onions in there. I'm just spreading them kind of around the meat so that they still get plenty of heat from the pan. Okay. All right, let's check this noodle. Perfect. It is chewy. I want it to be chewy because this pasta gets cooked twice. Okay, because we boil it. Don't talk and eat at the same time. We boil it and then we bake it. So we're gonna here, I'm gonna turn off my heat, always important. Because there are so many pans on my stove right now, I'm gonna wear oven mitts. I'm gonna carry this over to my colander and drain it so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Okay? Here is my colander. In we go, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and just set my pan off to the side because I'm gonna use it to coat the pasta in olive oil so I can store it in the fridge overnight. Okay, so once my pasta is all drained, all right, once it is all drained here in my colander, I'm gonna put it back in my pot, okay? My colander can now get washed, get all the pasta stuff off of it. And I'm gonna take just a little bit of olive oil, okay, and I'm gonna drizzle that over my pasta. Okay, I'm gonna take a spoon, stir that all around, okay, because I'm gonna let this cool, like I said, and then store it in the refrigerator overnight so that tomorrow I can put together the pasta. Okay? Oh, there's my eggs. So, just take a 1 gallon bag, just like this, okay? And I'm just gonna use a measuring cup to scoop it up, okay? I'm using a plastic measuring cup because this is a non-stick pot and I don't want to scratch the coating off of it, okay? So I'm just going to scoop my noodles up into a bag. You do not have to do this if you're making it directly, but we are coming back tomorrow to finish it, just like we would in a normal class. This would be a 2-day process. All right. So I have just about all of my noodles, okay, I can just pour the last few ones in, all right, and then my pot can also go in my sink to be washed, all right. Let's finish breaking up this meat and stirring these onions, and then this is also going to get set aside in the refrigerator for tomorrow. So by allowing the meat to cook as one big piece like I did, okay, I now do not have to worry about this. By allowing the meat to cook as one big piece like that, it's really easy to tell that it's done, okay? I'm not gonna worry about getting it broken up into like super tiny pieces because I can do more of that tomorrow when it's in the sauce, okay? So I'm just gonna let that continue to simmer, let the onions cook down, and just like I did with the pasta, I'll let it cool for a couple minutes, put it in a bag, store it up, and then we will pick up tomorrow with assembling the ziti and baking it. All right, we are back and we are finishing the Italian sausage and the sauce for the baked ziti. So I've got the sausage and the onions here in my pan, warming back up. Now it's time to season the meat, add the sauce, mix everything together, and put it in the oven. So, meat's warming up. Now it's time to add all those things that taste good. So we're gonna add our garlic. Okay. Remember, if you're doing this with fresh cloves of garlic, you're just gonna mince them with your knife. Okay. So garlic, we're gonna add our herbs. So this calls for Italian seasoning. I don't have any Italian seasoning here at school, so I can make my own using a mixture of basil, oregano, and thyme, okay? All right, just a little bit of thyme. Thyme is actually kind of lemony. It really brightens up your food, so that's really nice. All right, and then oregano. Oregano is one of those spices that actually grows all over the world, so we see it in cuisines everywhere. There's so many different varieties of oregano, so you see it all over the world. And we're gonna add some fresh basil. Okay, basil is probably one of my favorite herbs ever. There's lots of different varieties. There's Italian varieties. There's Thai varieties of basil, which is actually kind of spicy, like it's a little hot. I love Thai basil. So all different varieties. With basil, with any type of leafy thing you're gonna use, you wanna strip it off the stalks, okay? So I just took it off the stalks. I've got my basil here, and I'm actually going to kind of roll it into a little row here, and I'm going to do what's called a chiffonade. I'm going to cut just down the basil, really, really thin slices, okay? And now my basil is in these long strings, okay, like ribbons. That is our chiffonade. Now I'm just going to kind of cut across them a couple times to shorten those ribbons up, okay? All right, so there is our basil. I'm gonna add it to my meat, all right? And I'm going to add my sauce. So you just need a large jar of pasta sauce, about 30 ounces, 32 ounces, which is a quart. You could use crushed tomatoes for this, okay? Anything like that. This is actually only a 30-ounce jar of sauce, so I'm just gonna put a little bit of water in the jar, get all the excess sauce out of the jar, and then add that in. Okay. There we go. And then nothing is wasted. All right. So give this a good stir now. Let everything incorporate flavor-wise. All right. So now that's all mixed in. We are going to start assembling the ziti. So I have 2 baking dishes over here, okay? You would actually make this in like a large one. I just don't have big ones at school. Here is my pasta that we made yesterday, okay? It's cold, so I'm not worried about putting the hot sauce on it. You're gonna take the sauce, you're gonna only put about half of it on the noodles to start with, okay? So, turn my sauce down. All right, so there's my sauce. I'm just gonna grab a measuring cup to do this, okay? So I'm just gonna scoop about half of the sauce out of my pan over my noodles, okay? All right. And then I'm gonna toss my noodles in the sauce. I want all of them to be coated, but I don't want them drowning in sauce, okay? So all my noodles need to be coated in the sauce, okay? Then we are going to add our cheeses, all right? So once that is in there, all right, I'm gonna put just a little bit of sauce on the bottom of each pan. You don't need a lot, okay? Just a little bit on the bottom of each pan, all right? And kind of spread that around, all right? Baked ziti is essentially lasagna, okay? It's just lasagna without the long noodles, okay? So once I've got the sauce in there, now I'm gonna put in a layer of my noodles and meat sauce, okay? And really, because this is kind of a small dish, it's really only gonna be like 2 layers. So noodles and meat sauce. Now comes the fun part, all the cheese. I love cheese. Okay, so I'm adding ricotta cheese. Ricotta cheese is a soft cheese. It's softer than like cream cheese, but it has kind of a grainy texture, all right? So I'm just putting a couple big dollops of ricotta in there. It's actually going to melt through the pasta as it bakes. So that's gonna go right in there. All right, I'm gonna add some more in a minute. Then I'm gonna sprinkle in mozzarella. Mozzarella is a shredded white cheese. This is what you would normally associate with like your pizza. Okay, so mozzarella in there. You want this to be cheesy, okay? All right, now we're gonna go ahead and add the rest of the noodles. I'm gonna turn off my stove. Okay, so I'm gonna split the rest of my noodles between my 2 pans. Okay. Just kind of push that all down in there. All right. I'm gonna take some smaller dollops of ricotta this time. Okay. Because a big bite of cheese is great, but not everybody's down for that. Another thing, if you don't want to get like a big chunk of cheese in your mouth when you're eating this, you could always, while everything is still warm, the noodles and everything, Just mix all the cheeses in with the hot pasta and let it start to melt that way. So that's always an option as well if you didn't want to get a big dollop of cheese in your mouth. Okay? All right, I'm gonna take the last of my sauce here. All right, and I'm gonna spread this between my two pans here. Okay. Spread my sauce out. Goodness. What time is it? Just a couple minutes. All right, cheese, more mozzarella. Okay, more mozzarella. And then parmesan, the king of cheeses. Okay. Now, this whole dish is already cooked. Remember the noodles, we cooked them al dente, okay? It means to the tooth, so they were still a little firm. They had a little bounce back in them. So this is why we're cooking it twice. We also didn't want to cook them to death in the water because we are cooking them twice and they would have turned really mushy and icky if we had waited and cooked them all in the pot and then put them in the oven as well. All right. This is what it should look like when it goes in the oven. So we're gonna put these in the oven. They're gonna bake for about 20 to 25 minutes. At 350 degrees, my oven is preheated, okay? So 350 degrees, 20 to 25 minutes until the cheese is just all gooey and hot and delicious, okay? So I'm gonna start a timer so I don't forget. And we'll check back when they're done. All right, the timer has gone off. It is time to check our pasta. So you notice I have my oven mitts on. I'm pulling the rack out of the oven. I'm not sticking my hands deep in a hot oven, okay? I have oven mitts on both hands, okay? Because I do not want to burn myself. Do not try to do this one-handed. These are heavy pans, all right? Close that all up. And you guys can see it is hot. Ooey gooey, cheese is melted, okay? You can hear the cheese inside bubbling, all right? Make sure that you let your food cool a little bit before you take it out. You don't wanna burn your mouth, but these are delicious, easy, fast alternative to lasagna and super yum.